Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you from Goodison Park after what has been only Arsenal's second league defeat of the season, beaten here 1-0. The Goodison Park curse continues. What is it with Arsenal on this ground? They just cannot play well here. It's been 7 years, I think, since the last time Arsenal won here. With Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez inspired performance, and they were comfortably second best again here today. I think we all knew what to expect from Everton here. Sean Dyche's first game in charge. It was going to be a raucous atmosphere, it was going to be an intense atmosphere, it was going to be all about hard work, fighting, trying to get through it, and Arsenal just couldn't do it. They were way off it today, really were. You think back to that Manchester United defeat earlier in the season, Arsenal were very good that day. They played very, very well. It was completely opposite here. This was a deserved defeat. Everton were better than them all over the pitch. The few times that Arsenal did create themselves some decent chances, their finishing was really, really poor. It was wayward. It kind of summed up their performance, really, and it was just a really flat performance. They just couldn't quite. I think, look, Everton would have beaten a lot of teams here today with the way they played. They were so on it. They were inspired. The crowd was right behind them. They were definitely boosted by the whole new manager bounce thing. Sean Dyche's first game in charge. You could see that they played really, really well. And like I said, I think they would have beaten a lot of teams here today. But it was just still a little bit disappointing from Arsenal. They just never got going. They couldn't get that control they usually get in midfield. Partey was off it, Xhaka was off it, Odegaard was off it. I think Everton did a really good job in stifling that midfield. They sat really, really deep. They had 5 men across midfield, left Calvert-Lewin on his own up front when they weren't in possession, and they just swamped Arsenal in those central areas. And it's quite a tight ground here, proper old school ground, and they just really limited the space, and Arsenal just weren't able to cope with that. And when they did find themselves in a bit of space, certainly out wide, I thought Martinelli struggled. Saka saw a lot of the ball, but didn't really did too much. He had one shot cleared off the line in the first half. He missed quite a good chance in the second half when he snatched it one and put it over. But on the whole, it was just a disappointing performance, and Everton got the goal. It was one of those games where you just think, as it was sort of edging on, as the second half started, and Arsenal weren't really looking like they were going to go and score, you thought, okay, just don't lose this game. You're not playing well. You're coming up against a side who are playing well, who are really on it. The crowd are really behind them. You just get through this game. Don't lose it. But then a set piece, Odegaard got sort of isolated at the back post on Tarkowski. I mean, it's a total mismatch. Odegaard's not going to be able to do too much in the air against someone like Tarkowski, and he got a free header at the back post basically and scored. And in a game like this, the way it was going, if you were going to fall behind, it was always going to be really difficult to come back, and Arsenal just couldn't do it. They had a few chances, and like I said, there was one really good opportunity actually just before Everton scored. It was still 0-0, and Martinelli had a good run. Nketiah then did well, set up a good chance for Odegaard, and he put it over. And it was a big moment there because Everton went and scored a few minutes after that. And had that gone in, it could have been a different story. But Arsenal can have no complaints. There's certainly no excuses. They were beaten by the better side. Mikel Arteta had just been speaking to him afterwards in the press conference, and he accepted that. He said Everton were really good. We have to congratulate them. From our side, it's disappointing. The performance doesn't reflect what we have been doing. They were really direct, and we struggled to control that type of game. The last 15 minutes after we made the changes, we started to make a lot of rash decisions. That's exactly what they wanted. We didn't manage that well, and they got caught up a little bit in the emotion of it all. I think late on, Everton were winding them up a bit. Neil Maupay came on and was definitely winding them up a lot. And Arsenal got sucked into that at the end. Zinchenko was having to be pulled away and stuff. You could just see, I think, their sort of frustration all boiled over, and didn't quite have the wherewithal maybe to see the game out, and they kind of played into Everton's hand in the last 20 minutes or so. But Mikel was very keen afterwards to sort of put a sort of unifying message across, and I think that's key. The big thing now for Arsenal is next weekend against Brentford. They've got to get back on it. They've got to win that game. They responded really well to the defeat of Manchester United earlier this season. They've got to do that again because they've got Manchester City on the Wednesday. They can't go into that on the back of another disappointing result against Brentford. So that Brentford game next weekend is absolutely massive, you feel, for Arsenal. They've got to get back on it. They've got to respond. They've got to get back winning ways and take that into the Manchester City game, because if they don't, then that Manchester City game looks very, very difficult. So I think next weekend is going to be really key, and Mikel was very keen to point that out in his press conference, and he was keen to send out a bit of a unifying message. He said He said, "This is the moment I love my players more. Now we stay together. The journey is going to be difficult, challenging. There are going to be some big storms in the middle, and we have to overcome that. Now we have to prepare the week really well to get to Saturday with the right emotional level to be perfect." And it's just key. In seasons like this, if you're going for a title, if you're going for anything, it's all about how you respond. And Arsenal have had a bad day today. They've had a bad performance. There haven't been many of them this season, but this was one of them. And now it's just all about responding and getting back on it very, very quickly, because he can't afford to let one defeat turn into 2 or turn into 3. You've got to respond well, and that's going to be crucial for Arsenal this season. Okay, player ratings wise, as you can tell, they're not going to be very high today. There weren't very many good performances from Arsenal at all in this one. Lots of disappointing performances. I thought there was one particular who's a sort of standout player for me, but we'll get to that as we go. Aaron Ramsdale, actually, I thought had a good game in goal. I thought he didn't do too much wrong. He couldn't do anything for goal. He kind of got pinned on his line in the set piece, and there was nothing more he could do. But other than that, he was pretty sharp, made a couple of good stops. I thought he commanded his area well under a lot of pressure, because Everton did put him under a lot of pressure and put a lot of balls into the box. I thought he did it pretty well. So I'm giving Aaron Ramsdale 7. Ben White had a really, really difficult afternoon. Did against United last time out as well, and he did today. I was surprised he stayed on as long as he did, actually. He said he'd been one of Arsenal's most consistent performers this season, Ben White, but he's clearly having a bit of a sort of dip in confidence, dip in levels at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we see Tomiyasu against Brentford next weekend. So I'm going to give Ben White a 4. Saliba, I thought, played pretty well. Saliba and Gabriel, actually, I thought played very well. It was a really good, intriguing contest between them and Calvert-Lewin. Very physical one, as you can imagine. I thought Saliba did well. I'm going to give Saliba a 7. Gabriel was my man of the match. I thought he played really, really well. He's in a really good run of form at the moment. I thought he continued that today. He couldn't do anything with a goal. He wasn't there. It was, like I said, it was Odegaard on Tarkowski. But overall, I thought Gabriel was Arsenal's standout performer by a distance, and he was man of the match for me. I'm going to give him 8 out of 10. Zinchenko saw lots of the ball. He was always lively, as always. Not up to the standards that we've seen him against Tottenham and United recently, but he was still, he was always on the ball, trying to get on the ball, trying to make something happen. But it was just a little bit off it today. And when he did drift into that inverted fullback position, when he was in sort of adding to the numbers in midfield, it was so swamped because there was so many players in there that he just couldn't quite make the difference that we've seen of him as late. So he was Zinchenko at 6. Thomas Partey, I thought, really struggled. I don't know if he was fit or not. Came off quite early on, just on the hour mark for Jorginho, just before Everton scored from the set piece, actually, which might have been a factor, because Partey is obviously very crucial when it comes to defending set pieces. He often heads those away, and it was only about a minute later that Everton scored, so maybe Arsenal hadn't reorganised in time from the set pieces to deal with that. But I thought on the whole his performance-wise just wasn't great. I think obviously we knew he had that rib injury against Manchester City. I don't know if that was impacting him a lot or in any way in this game, but he just looked a little bit off it. His touch was poor, his passing was poor, and it wasn't just him, it was the whole midfield trio of him, Odegaard and Xhaka. They just weren't on it. So I give Partey a 5. I'm going to give Xhaka a 6. He worked typically hard, did all that, but it wasn't all sort of working out for him. I'm going to give him a 6. Odegaard, I thought, was poor. Took a real big whack in the first half, was limping, clearly wasn't happy. I don't know if he was kind of playing with an injury after that, but he just wasn't on it today, Odegaard, as well. He's been so good for so long now, but this was a disappointing performance from him. I'm going to give him a 5. And then up front, Martinelli struggled. A lot of the play was being switched out to the right, and Martinelli was being sort of starved of possession a lot, especially in the first half. But when he did get on the ball, he just wasn't really making things happen. He was trying, but he was getting doubled up on a lot by Coleman and other players, and he just couldn't really make much of an impact. Had one good little run which set up a chance for Odegaard in the second half, but other than that, it was a disappointing performance from Martinelli, and he got hooked for Trossard, who I thought was quite lively actually when he came on. Trossard had one good shot that was saved. So Martinelli gets a 5. Saka, I'm going to give a 6. Again, he saw lots of the ball, but he just didn't do too much with it. He had really good chance in the second half, which he snatched at and put over the top. Had one good volley in the first half, actually, that was cleared off the line. That was a good strike, because it was a difficult sort of technique to pull off on the volley. The ball was dropping down from a good height, but just not a good performance from Saka. He gets a 6. And Nketiah, this was the sort of game where you do miss Gabriel Jesus. I've been full of praise for Nketiah recently, and I'm not going to criticise him here, because Arsenal end up swinging crosses in, and you go Nketiah against Tarkowski and Cody, and when you're swinging crosses in, there's only one winner there, and it's not going to be Nketiah, it's going to be the Everton centre-backs. But where he did suffer a little bit, I think, and this is why this is the type of game when it's so tight and Everton are sitting so deep. You kind of want that Gabriel Jesus type player who can drift out, can pull the centre backs apart, sort of make them have gaps between them. And Nketiah can't really do that. It's not his game, is it? And I think this was one where he really struggled, and Arsenal struggled as a result, because the centre backs could just stay compact, stay tight, and they weren't cause too many problems. So Nketiah gets a 5. Subs who came on, I thought Trossard was bright, but couldn't really make too much of an impact. He had one shot that was saved. The others didn't really. Jorginho came on for his debut, was neat and tidy, but it didn't help that Everton scored straight away from the set piece after that, and then you're chasing the game, and Everton are up, so you couldn't really see the best of him. Tomiyasu came on right at the end, but I'm not going to give any ratings for those subs. Okay, so that's it from me, from Everton. I've got a long drive back home now to be depressed about. But look, it hasn't happened too many times this season, so don't let it ruin your weekend too much. Arsenal are still top of the league. They're still enjoying a fantastic season, but now the crucial thing after this really disappointing defeat is how they respond. That Brentford game next weekend, absolutely massive. Thanks for watching, everyone. Speak to you soon.